I mean, a toolbox. I know a lot of people just carry a tool kit to try to keep space down, but one place I'm not willing to compromise is on tools. You know, you never know what you might run across out here. This is a, I think, 152 piece Duralast kit. It's got everything in it. And so because I have the space, I carry it. Now it is a little heavy, and I do try to keep my weight down as much as the next person, but that was just sort of a lesser of evils decision to carry that toolbox with me everywhere I go. I also carry some detail stuff, and again, I mentioned I got propane bottles everywhere. I stick them pretty much in any hole that I can create when I'm loading up. But in order to reduce clutter and things, I use these Sterlite storage containers like you'd have in your closet at home, and I try to keep them sort of categorized. Got lots of little goodies in here, things that I need out here on the road. Dishwashing liquid, carry an extra tube of adhesive sealer, denture stuff. I mean, there's no telling what you'll see in one of mine. I got emergency kit, first aid kit, mosquito spray, stuff like that, that I don't want to have that kind of stuff loose in my trailer, so I carry several of these containers with me out here on the road. Here's another one right here, and there's it helps me condense my clutter. Of course, I carry a full first aid box. I have to be a little careful with my heart condition. I take blood thinners, so I've got to be especially careful if I get cut or anything like that, because I do tend to kind of bleed a little bit if that happens, so I have to be extra careful in that regard. I carry motor oil, a whisk broom, citronella candles. I got a couple more of these containers in here, but I won't drag those out. But that brings us down to the very basics of the Power Wagon itself, and that's my electrical components. The Power Wagon is set up to be completely self-sufficient, and I can stay completely off the grid with it. First of all, my major component is my Blue Eddy power station. This is a Blue Eddy model EB3A. It only cost about $239, and it's a 268 watt hour solar power station. There's where my solar panel plugs into it right here. It has pass-through solar, so it gives me the ability to run things off of it while I'm going down the road. It will charge and take in wattage from the solar panel. By the way, this solar panel is a Renogy 100 watt solar panel. It actually creates about 80 to 84 watts of power in full sun, and that's what it feeds into the Blue Eddy. So as long as I'm not using more than 100 watts of power during the day going down the road, I actually experience a surplus, and it keeps it topped off at 100% of its charge during the daytime. Now you may be wondering, well, what do you do at night? And that's a good question. I have a 100 amp hour backup battery right here. This is a lithium ion phosphate 12 volt 100 amp hour backup battery, and all I do is it's sort of a hack I learned online from watching videos. I just hook this to my power station at night, and it draws energy from the battery and keeps the power station again at 100% all night long. And then the way that I charge the power station is maybe every couple of days or so, I can visit somewhere that has power, and I carry this 8-amp battery charger with me, and I can charge this battery back up in about 2 hours using this small device. But I can also charge it with the solar panel. I have a small charge controller. The thing about a battery like this is it doesn't have a brain to know when it's fully charged. And so if you just hook up your solar panel directly to it and it continues to take in wattage, you know, it doesn't know when to stop, and that you run the risk of an exploding battery or doing damage to it. A charge controller is a cheap little device. You can get one for $25, $30 on Amazon or at Harbor Freight at the store or something, and you hook that charge controller up in between your solar panel and the battery, and the charge controller knows to control the charge that it's receiving from the solar panel at a certain rate, and therefore you don't overcharge this battery or risk doing damage to it. So that way, as long as I'm able to keep this battery charged up, I'm always able to keep my power station at 100% charge most of the time, both during the day and at night. If I run into a couple of bad days of weather and there's no sun, for instance, this figuring your watt hours is really very easy. It's you simply take your volts, 12 volts, times 100 amp, and that's your watt hours, which would be 1200. And that brings us to the most important component that I have that lends to my self-sufficiency out here, and that's my refrigerator. I won't pick it up and show it, but it's a Vevor 12 volt AC DC 15 quart refrigerator. Now, it's not one of those little cheap plug-in coolers. This is an actual refrigerator with a real compressor. So the compressor kicks off and on, and once the temperature is down to your target of about, I keep mine at about 37 degrees, 36 degrees. Once you get it down to that level, you can set it on eco mode, and the compressor doesn't stay on all the time. It just kicks off and on when it needs to in order to keep it at that level. So technically, it draws about 30 watts of power when it's on. So if you do the math there, 30 watts of power would run for 40 hours off of that 1200 amp hour battery if the compressor stayed on all the time, but it doesn't. So technically this will last you about 3 days using this system right here. And then at that point, if it was 3 days worth of bad weather and my backup battery was getting dead, I would have to search out some power somewhere and plug in my battery charger and charge my backup battery back up again. But so far I haven't had that happen yet. I have gotten into my last day and looked up and saw the sun come up. You know, you just got to kind of play with that and do your planning. Now, another interesting feature about this Blue Eddy power station, having the pass-through solar and being able to use it all the time, you can actually draw up to 600 watts off of this thing if you have to. So, you know, it'll power some small electrical devices for, you know, several minutes without, you know, discharging it too bad. Of course, I cook with propane, but I also have another very interesting little cooking device that I carry with me called a Hot Logic Mini, and this is one right here. It's actually cooking my lunch right now. This is warm. Inside here is just a little casserole dish, and you put your food inside of it, and this thing heats it very slowly. It draws about 30 watts of power. At first it's a little bit more, but it calms itself back down once it starts getting hot. And it can actually cook food from raw. Like you can put raw chicken in here and cook it in 2.5 hours. But you can also just use it as a food warmer, and say you prepared yourself something in the morning at the campsite, you could dump it in here, plug this in, and it'll keep it warm for you until lunchtime, and you just pull over and sit down at a picnic table at an overlook somewhere, or a scenic area, and sit down and eat your lunch. I'm using it to cook my lunch right now. Stick around to the end of the video and I'll open this up and show you what I'm having. But basically that's most of the components of my trailer. I believe that with the things that I'm using now, of course I have other things. I've got my little hatchet for chopping up firewood. I keep a kitchen knife to carry around for cutting things up. I've got my travel mug. I've got all the the things that I basically require, and of course inside all these little Sterlite containers are my kitchen things: oils, spices, cooking materials, silverware, and all the things I require for doing my own cooking. Again, I emphasize that I do all of my own cooking. That's very important to me, and hopefully those of you that see my videos can get some good cooking ideas. I try to make something a little different, and will in all the videos. Obviously my channel hasn't been up for a very long time, but I got some advice from another YouTuber that I should go ahead and film a video such as this that sort of showed all the things I travel with. As I mentioned on my Facebook